What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so before you click off the video, I'm going to give you a peer through the looking glass into the mind's eye of some of these activist judges, folks. Check this out right quick. Check it out. Judge blocks provision of law that strips Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood affiliates. I know you might be thinking, well, that's kind of boring. But this is very, very interesting, folks. And once again, it can give you kind of a little bit of insight into where some of these judges are lining up. This is an absolute insane story. Check this out, y'all. A federal judge has again blocked a provision Congress passed in July that stripped federal Medicaid funding from Planned Parenthood affiliates, ruling that the language likely places an unconstitutional burden on states to apply vague criteria about the scope of the ban. Now, I went and actually searched for this vague criteria, if you will, and I've got that for you, and I'm going to read that to you guys. But we're going to get the judge's take on this right quick. This is all just opinion from Politico right now. It's not really news. It's more opinion. Acting on a lawsuit filed in July by 22 Democratic-led states, U.S. District Judge Indira Talwani, sound familiar to anybody? Issued a preliminary injunction Tuesday prohibiting the Trump administration from requiring states to figure out which of their health care providers are covered by the ban and stop funding the non-abortion services the clinics provide to Medicaid patients. Now, that right there is going to be important. Which clinics and what provisions, right? Who is going to suffer this ban and for what reasons, basically. Remember that. Talwani said the Constitution requires Congress to be clear when imposing requirements related to federal funding so state officials can decide whether to accept what amounts to a restriction on their usual authority. The ban contained in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act does not furnish states with clear notice as to the meaning and application of the provisions criteria for denying funding, the judge wrote in her 45-page opinion. Talwani also said the ban appeared to be unconstitutional because it applies retroactively by requiring states to redo agreements they've already reached with federal Medicaid officials or managed care providers. The judge concluded that some states are so dependent on Planned Parenthood affiliates to serve Medicaid patients that trying to comply with the limits in the law could cause irreparable harm, folks. Irreparable harm. Okay, well, I wonder what these provisions are. You might be thinking, I wonder what those are, right? How convoluted is this? We're going to go over some legal mumbo-jumbo, but I've already read over this, so it's not too hard to comprehend. If you have a decent comprehension level, this should hit home for you, because it is legalese, if you will, but it's not all that hard, folks. Let's get into this, and I'll explain on some of the more convoluted parts. Payments to prohibited entities. In general, Section 71-113. That's the section in the Big Beautiful Bill or whatever. Payments to prohibited entities. In general, no federal funds considered direct spending as defined in Section 250C of the Balanced Budget and Emergency Deficit Control Act of 1985, 2 U.S.C. 900C, blah, 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 and provided to carry out a state plan under Title 19 of the Social Security Act, 42 U.S.C. 1396. Or a waiver of such a plan shall be used to make payments to a prohibited entity for items and services furnished during the first year period beginning on the date of the enactment of this act. Such payments include payments made directly to the entity or under a contract or other arrangement between a state and a covered organization. Definitions in this section. Covered organizations. The term covered organization means a Medicaid managed care entity as defined in Section 1932 A1B of the Social Security Act, 42 U.S.C. 1933, a primary care case management entity or prepaid inpatient health plan or prepaid ambulatory health plan as described in Section 1903 and blah, 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 such blah, 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 blah. The term prohibited entity means an entity, including any affiliate, subsidiary, successor, or clinic of such entity that, as of the first day of the first quarter beginning after the date of the enactment of this act, meets each of the following. The entity is described in Section 501c3. Recognize that, anybody? So basically, any 501c3 medical organization, basically any nonprofit, of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 and exempt from tax under Section 501A of such code. The entity is an essential community provider described in Section 156.235 of Title 45 Code of Federal Regulations, as in effect on the date of the enactment of this act. That is primarily engaged in family planning services, reproductive health, and other related medical care. The entity provides abortions other than any of the following: abortions in the case of emergency, which, in the physician's good faith medical judgment, is necessary to save the life of the pregnant woman because her life is endangered by a physical disorder, physical injury, or physical illness, including a life-endangering physical condition caused by or arising from pregnancy itself, and such judgment is certified in writing by the physician. Okay, so that was a lot right there, okay? So we're going to finish that, but that was a lot. So basically, Medicaid is not going to pay for any abortions or any health care provided by abortion clinics. Any nonprofit, Planned Parenthood included, but any nonprofit. To me, that was clear as day right there. That any nonprofit that provides medical services that also provide abortions, we're not going to cover that. So basically, you know how your health insurance places, they don't have certain doctors in the loop or whatever in their circuit or whatever the hell it's called. I forget what it's called right off the top, but basically you know what I'm talking about, right? So, Medicaid can pick and choose which doctors basically to cover. That's basically all this is. Any nonprofit company that provides abortion care services, we're not going to cover anything that you guys do, anything at all, unless it is to save the life of the mother. If there's some sort of emergency. See, folks, that's something else. This is a disingenuous argument from Democrats that this provision right there is always placed in anytime abortion is talked about, folks. If it endangers the life of the mother. That's one of the arguments from Democrats on a consistent basis. That, they're going to kill women because we can't get an abortion. What if it's an emergency? Blah, 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 blah. They're just going to let the woman die. That's not true. It's never true. It never has been true. It never will be true. It's a blatant and outright lie. Anytime the mother's life is in danger and they must provide an abortion for some reason to save the mother's life. Like, I don't understand how the baby would be killing. But I'm just saying it could happen. I'm not a doctor, so don't take my advice on that, right? I am not a doctor. I just see it exceedingly rare that would be the case, right? I'm not saying it can't happen, but exceedingly rare. And the way Democrats talk about it, it happens all the freaking time. But basically, that's what it is. Any nonprofit that provides abortion care, yeah, we're not going to cover no services from you guys. You are no longer getting funding from us. That's it. We know why this judge put an injunction on this order right here in particular. And think about that, folks. Your Congress, write up legislation to make your life better, right? Because we're spending way too much money on a lot of these things to make your life better. And a judge, a single friggin' judge, can come in and strike that down. This was passed by the House, by the Senate, and signed off by the President. Folks, this is a big, beautiful bill. It can go through the whole legislative process. And one judge strikes it down. That's insane, don't you think? What's the freaking point of Congress if one judge can strike it down? That's insane to me. Insane. Abortions in the case of rape or incest in fiscal year 2023, the entity, including any affiliate, subsidiary, successor, or clinic of such entity, received more than $800,000 in expenditures for medical assistance under Title 19 of the Social Security Act. So basically, there you go again. If these clinics, any clinic, right, any nonprofit that received more than $800,000 from the federal government in Medicaid payments that performed any of those, abortions and for whatever, right, you got to pay that money back. Boom. There you go. I love it, folks. That's awesome if you ask me. Including such expenditures made directly to the entity or through a covered organization or as part of a nationwide healthcare provider network. That was the term. I'm sorry. If the doctor's not in your network circuit, well, it's all the same crap. As determined by the Secretary of the State. The term state has the meaning given such term in Section 1101 of the Social Security Act, 42 U.S.C. funding. There is appropriated to the administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, $1 million for fiscal year 2026 to remain available until expended for purposes of carrying out this section, folks. Now, some of that's a little bit convoluted. I'm not going to lie. Right, but once again, it's all, if you go through and go back, listen to what I was saying, like rewind it and listen to it, it's all very, very clear. A judge should easily be able to comprehend this, folks. These people went to law school. They know how to read legalese. I have no legal training whatsoever. The closest thing I have to legal training is a friend that happens to be a lawyer. That's it. Personal injury lawyer. And he does like divorces, family law, and stuff like that. Right, simple. He does med mal as well, medical malpractice. But, he kind of just does that on the side. He doesn't like doing that. But anyway, because for some reason it doesn't pay enough, according to him. But anyway, so that's all. And if I can comprehend this, folks, I'm sure it's easy for you guys. Once again, read it twice. Go back, listen to it twice. That's very simple to understand. Any nonprofit that provides abortion care. That's clear. And she said, oh, it's so convoluted, we have no idea what's going on. Lies, folks. Outright and blatant lies. Insane. Talwani, an Obama appointee, put her ruling on hold for 7 days to allow the Justice Department to seek relief from a higher court. Her order lifting the Planned Parenthood funding ban applies only to the plaintiffs in the lawsuit, the Medicaid programs run by 22 states and the District of Columbia. So basically, this is going into effect in Republican states. Yeah, because you can't do nationwide injunctions anymore. The Supreme Court said, nuh-uh. But stay here on the video. Stay here. We got some more interesting quotes coming up here in a second. Spokespeople for the Department of Health and Human Services did not immediately respond to requests for comment, but did they respond? A Justice Department spokesperson declined to comment. Well, there you go. That was clear cut. I hate how they did not immediately respond. Yeah, but did they? And if they did, why didn't you put it in here? And why even put that? Why tell us? Like, I didn't respond to a request for comment either. They never sent a request for comment. But, the insinuation there is that they actually did. If I wouldn't have said they didn't request a comment from me. They may not have even requested a comment. Or they may have just, the reporter or whoever typed this up may have just been like sitting in his office typing this out, be like, I wonder if Health and Human Services would love to comment on this. Nope, they didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. Could have been. You never know that. It's a true statement at that point because they didn't respond. They didn't hear the request, but that doesn't matter because all they said was they didn't respond. These people are manipulative, folks. Planned Parenthood hailed the judge's decision. The district court again recognized the defund law for what it is, unconstitutional. Yes, folks, it is unconstitutional. The framers were intent on making sure that the federal government must provide abortion care to people that can't afford it. Must. You think that's true? Do you really think that's true? That the federal government must pay the states who pay for this stuff It's ridiculous. It's unconstitutional and dangerous. Oh, is it dangerous? Is that so? The organization said in a statement. The case is just one of several pending around the country that could reverse state and federal attempts to strip the national network of reproductive health clinics of taxpayer dollars. Yes, all of it should be stripped. Every single bit of it, folks. I don't want to pay for somebody else's abortion. I find it abhorrent that these people are aborting babies to the tune of $1 million per year. That's insane. I don't want to pay for that. It actually goes against my religion. I should have some religious exemption from that, right? Maybe somebody with more funds than I have could sue the government over this. Planned Parenthood's national organization, joined by its state affiliates from Utah and Massachusetts and an independent network of clinics in Maine, filed their own challenge shortly after President Donald Trump signed the defunding law in July. Talwani handled the lawsuit and granted a preliminary injunction against the law, concluding that it amounted to an unconstitutional bill of attainder against Planned Parenthood. However, the First Circuit Court of Appeals put her ruling on hold in September pending further review. I love that, folks. Every time these go to appeals, almost every time, they're like, no, this is insane. You can't do this. On a call with reporters ahead of the arguments in that case in November, Planned Parenthood President and CEO Alexis McGill Johnson said its clinics provided more than $45 million in free non-abortion services for thousands of patients in September alone, services that Medicaid previously covered. These efforts aren't sustainable, she warned. I love that. Let's keep going. While Planned Parenthood health centers are committed to ensuring patients can get the care they need, they can't continue to absorb tens of millions of dollars in additional costs each month. And you think the federal government can? This is the insanity of these people. If they can't afford to do it in their own clinics, how do you think the federal government can? The federal government is spending $1.8 trillion more than it takes in revenue. You know how they're funding this, by the way? By reducing your purchasing power, causing inflation. That is how the government can spend more money than what it takes in. It's insane. It's outright insane. And as we were just discussing on one of my previous videos, fiscal responsibility, folks. They're trying to introduce a constitutional amendment to force, basically, to give bumper guards. You know, they need to put their floaties on. Congressmen and women need to put their floaties on before jumping into the pool of a balanced budget. It's basically they want to make a constitutional amendment that will force them to balance the budget. Hey, do what you got to do, whatever you got to do to balance the budget, folks. But look, if they can't sustain their own company that is a non-profit, that means they can accept donations and provide services. If they can't sustain that, how can the federal government sustain it for the entire country? They can't, folks. We can't pay for ridiculous medical services. Something that most Americans don't even agree with. It's insane. It truly is, folks. That's why I told you at the beginning, this is going to be an interesting video. Very interesting, so make sure and stay tuned. Of course, my videos, in my opinion, are always interesting. Except when they're not. Unfortunately. But I think I've rambled on for long enough. You guys let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Don't forget, smash that like button for me. Subscribe. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. Click the join button, sign up, and become a member. That would be great. That would be the best thing you could do for me. I would be deeply appreciative if you guys would do that. I need the help. I could use it, to be honest with you. $5 a month, $10 a month. It ain't much, right? And you get exclusive content just for you. But you guys remember something. Look, God has a plan for everybody. Everybody. Including aborted babies, folks. Including aborted babies. I was just talking with a Gen Z kid that works with us earlier about abortion. he finds it abhorrent. He's like, it's murder. It's outright murder. I was like, yes, I know. Trust me, bro. But it's great, y'all. Look, God does have a plan for everybody, and he loves each and every one of you out there. So you guys try to have a good day. Stay logical. Peace.